Well, thank you all for joining today's presentation. Thanks for the invitation, Peter, and for all the organizers of the event. Glad to be here. Today's presentation has it was already announced, its big name since we recently have this rebranding. So I'm not going to repeat the presentation name, just a brief introduction about myself. My name is Yuri Diogenes. I've been working at Microsoft for almost 15 years now, 15 years in January. I've been working with Azure Security Center since its creation, since it was a called prototype ROM back in 2015, and been working as a PM for this project since 2017. Very exciting times, a lot of new things in Security Center. But before we start talking about the things in Security Center, let's set a context around security hygiene. Why is so important to drive your security posture enhancement because of security hygiene? We've been noticing over times, and there are many studies out there, even prior to COVID, that shows that security hygiene is the number one priority. 93% of most of the exploitations occur because of misconfiguration, because of lack of security hygiene. That's proven throughout many years. Since 2017, 16, we've been talking about that. Very important aspect. Now, what we noticed during the pandemic is that threat actors started to leverage COVID-19 theme as a way to gain access to workloads and a way to entice users to do something. And most of the time, those strategies, those techniques were using old techniques and basically exploiting known vulnerabilities and known misconfigurations. So again, security hygiene, right? It doesn't really matter if you have top level detection if you are not doing your homework and ensuring that you are protected. So that's where Security Center plays a big role to give you visibility of those items that needs to be remediated. Now, when we think about security hygiene, that's only one aspect of the overall security posture management. Security hygiene plays a big role in the protection aspect because everything that is considered a prevention capability is considered something that applies to the protection. So in other words, you are doing the core hygiene to ensure that the vulnerabilities are mitigated, that the security configuration hardening is applied to the system, everything is done correctly to reduce the likelihood that if a threat actor tries to exploit some of those items, it will be successful. So that's the idea behind the protection. Is really a proactive work, and unfortunately is the work that is not done correctly for most of the organizations. They prefer to invest more time doing detections, which is very important, but if it is done unbalanced, you're going to have a lot of catch up to do just because you allow threat access to get in the first place. So if you don't have very strong protection, you probably going to have a lot of detections to catch up and overload your SOC and your incident responders because there is a lot of things going on. So needs to be a synergy across all the three major pillars: protection, detection, and respond. And you can leverage Azure Security Center / Azure Defender for those areas as well. Now, when we're talking about Azure Security Center and Azure Defender, I will explain more about this change of terminology, but I want to first go to the first scenario, which is cloud security posture management. So if you think about how security has evolved over the years, cloud security posture management uses the same core principle of defense in depth that we've been using over the years. I remember working back in the day with ISO server, which was one of the layers of defense, creating the perimeter and everything. But nowadays is way more in depth because if the threat actor gains access to a compromised credential, he doesn't even need to worry about bypassing the firewall because he is already inside the network with that credential. So with cloud security posture management capabilities, what you really want to do is make sure that you have the core visibility of your workloads and the in-depth visibility of the options that can be improved as far as the security aspect of those workloads. That's why Security Center, which is the free version of the software, the platform, gives you that capability. So now we have Security Center, which is responsible for cloud security posture management, and we have Azure Defender, which is more leaning towards the workload protection. So that's the differentiation if you think about Security Center is part of the free tier, and if you need to upgrade to enhance some aspects of your cloud security, you upgrade to Azure Defender, which is the paid version, which used to be called Azure Security Center Standard tier, right? So with this whole thing in mind, we completely rebranded the solution, giving you a new aspect of the UI. It's very important again to remember. I've seen some mistakes in social media. People saying Security Center was renamed to Azure Defender. That's not true. If you look for Azure Defender portal, there's no such a thing as Azure Defender portal. Azure Defender is critical part of Azure Security Center. Azure Security Center still is the cloud security solution. Okay. The only difference is that the paid tier of Security Center is now called Azure Defender. So when you upgrade from free tier to the paid version, you are actually upgrading to the Azure Defender. Okay, and I will go in more details about some of those aspects on that. But the entire dashboard was updated at Ignite, giving you more clarity. We added some items here, as you can see, about our multi-cloud solution, which I'll go in more details in the next slide. Okay, and we are more clean, giving more information about what is available from the CSPM and workload protection perspective. Now, talking about the addition of the multi-cloud solution, we add the capability to connect with GCP and AWS. And this initial journey through a multi-cloud solution, in this initial step, we have assessment management. In other words, when you onboard AWS or GCP to see those recommendations on Security Center, you will be able to see everything that you have related to security recommendations for Azure. And also, we are retrieving information from Secure Hub on AWS to provide this visualization on a single dashboard. So the intent is using Security Center as your primary tool for secure posture management, not only in Azure, but also in other cloud providers. We have also threat detection for VMs that are running on AWS and GCP as well. We are leveraging Azure Arc for that, which is also part of the solution. And the other thing that we announced at Ignite is the capability to do vulnerability assessment powered by Qualys on-premise machines as well as AWS and GCP. Because when we released this feature early this year, it was only for Azure VM, right? So now we announced the capability to do also in different cloud providers and also on-prem. It does require Azure Arc. So you have to onboard the VM on Azure Arc first, and then install the log analytics agents, which is part of the Azure Security Center solution. And then there will be the discovery of those machines, and those machines will receive the recommendation to install the vulnerability assessment. The other things that we have that are also multi-cloud are our automation. Workflow automation works not only for resources in Windows, but also resources in a different cloud provider. So again, going back to this single platform to visualize information, we released also the inventory capability that allows you to query across different subscriptions, different types of resources, and the state of the resources. So it's a pretty cool feature, not only because it gives you that centralized visualization of the resources, but also because you have here the resource graph capability. So you can start filtering in this dashboard And if you need to customize your filter, you just click on View in Resource Graph, and another tab is going to open up, and it will pre-create the query in Resource Graph using custom query language based on the filter that you've done on this blade. And then you can customize and go more deeper from there. So it's a pretty cool thing that you have available as well. You're going to be able to do queries via using tags, which is very important. A lot of customers, they request the capability for us to be more involved on the tags and query around that. So we added this capability as well. The other thing that we added was the resource exemption. We receive a lot of feedback from customers over the years, and yes, this took some time to get ready, but it's finally there. The capability to exempt some resources. So let's say that you have a recommendation that is asking you to enable disk encryption for 10 VMs. And for some reason, out of those 10 VMs, there are 2 that you cannot enable disk encryption for some reason. Let's say you have an app, and this app is going to break if you enable disk encryption, or whatever the reason is. There are 2 VMs out of 10 that you know for sure that you're not going to enable disk encryption. Well, in the past, customers were stuck with those scenarios, and they could not gain points on the secure score because they will never remediate the entire recommendation. So with this feature now, you're going to be able to exempt some resources, okay, and provide a justification. That's why you have the justification details field here. And if you select the option to do this for a specific period of time, you can also exempt for like 3 months or so, and then reevaluate if you need to re-enable again. So that's a very interesting capability for customers that are using the secure score as their main KPI to drive secure posture enhancement. Okay, a lot of customers, at least here in the US, they are utilizing the Azure Security Center secure score as the KPI to measure improvement on the secure posture, and we strongly recommend you to do the same. Okay, so let me go through a demonstration here real quick. Going back to the main dashboard, and let me go here for the recommendations. So let me start here for the recommendation because there are a couple of things that were added recently. Actually, those filters that you see here, we released this week. So it's brand new. Those filters are important because we have a lot of customers that came to us and say, look, I see that you have all those secure controls, and I think it's cool, but there are some recommendations that I already completed. So I didn't want to see recommendations that I already mitigated, right? I want to see only recommendations that are open. Everything that I already remediated, I don't want to see it. So here on the recommendations, you have the option to see only the active ones. The ones that are completed, you don't need to see it, right? So that's a cool visualization just to focus on what is important. And since you have the breakdown in secure controls, which is very important since you only gain points based on the secure control, you have to remediate everything except recommendations that are in preview. This is also something new that we recently changed the behavior. Everything that we add a tag as preview, it means that that recommendation is still in preview, in public preview. Therefore, is not going to impact your secure score, which means that in this case, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 recommendations to remediate. If you remediate only those 5 and you don't remediate this last one, that's fine. You're going to get the 6 points on your secure score because this one is a preview. And then it comes this next question, which is, okay, so I would like to see only the recommendations that are in GA. I don't care about preview. I want to see only recommendations that are GA. So you can also create this filter and visualize that information. So this is a simple enhancement that we added, but is important because it was direct feedback from customers. So let me just change here my subscription real quick. The reason for this change is because I want to show that when you have a subscription that already has connectivity with different cloud providers, you will see that we add a tag for AWS, for GCP, right? So the vision is once those recommendations for the different cloud providers, they go GA, you will have to remediate those recommendations in order to gain those points for the security control. So very important, if you are going to use Security Center as your centralized cloud security posture management platform, ideally you're going to connect with the other providers and you're going to have to remediate those recommendations in order to gain points. Okay, very important to emphasize that. So that's the idea behind bringing up resources that are in different cloud providers. And on the first screen here, you'll be able to see the AWS accounts that you are connected to, how many accounts, and how many GCP projects you are connected to as well. So very, very cool capability. On the inventory perspective, again, this is a feature that I was explaining. It has lots of specific filters that you can create here. For example, let's say you only see VMs that are not monitored, that are unmonitored at this point. So there is a bunch of Azure Arc. So this is the icon for Azure Arc. There's a bunch of Azure Arc machines that are currently not on monitor. Okay, so it gives you this quick flexibility to see that. And again, if you want to expand, you can click on the Open Query and open this query on Azure Resource Graph and go from there. Now you have the ability to customize and make changes on this specific query to reach whatever you want, and then download in CSV. So pretty flexible use of these capabilities as well, inventory. All right. Okay, so this was the first pillar, Cloud Security Posture Management. These are some of the capabilities under the Cloud Security Posture Management. Now, what is really the advantage of going through Azure Defender? So before I go to this path, I want to make sure that you all have a sense of how important it is for you, community leaders, to evangelize your customers to use Azure Security Center free tier. Even if they don't want to upgrade because of cost or whatever it is, they should be using the free tier. There's absolutely no reason to not utilize the free tier. It's like having a alarm in your house that is looking out for all the doors and windows that are open and give you information, tangible information of what to do and how to close those doors and alarm you if the door is open, but you don't utilize. It's free, it's there, just use it, right? So make sure that you are evangelizing customers to use this and using the security score to drive the enhancement, because it's very important that they are having this progression in the right direction. Okay. Now, this is the pillar, the protection pillar of our all security posture management life cycle. The second part is the detection, and that's where Azure Defender comes in, because we have threat detection for specific workloads, which is extremely important that the analytics that were built for specific workloads. It doesn't really matter if you have threat detection for VMs if the workload that you are monitoring is network traffic or IoT or applications or SQL. Those are different analytics. Each one of those workloads, they have its own threat landscape. So you need to have analytics that were built for that particular scenario. And our analytics, they are always built based on the cyber Q chain, which although has formally seven phases, we have, for the purpose of this presentation, combined in three major phases, right? So the target and attack, which is where the threat actor establish access and compromise the workload. It could be, for example, via RDP brute force attack. And what we noticed during our last Microsoft Defense study is that RDP brute force attack is still the number one reason why machines get compromised, because they are exposed to the internet. There is no one actively monitoring those machines. RDP brute force is going to work sooner or later, right? So very important point. Our analytics, the ideal scenario is that you catch the threat actor compromising the resource early on into the stage of the cyber queue chain. Because if you are able to identify the malicious activity happening right in the beginning, you will be able to quickly respond and avoid the threat actor to continue moving laterally and continue doing malicious activity until they reach their final mission, because every threat actor has its own intents and mission to accomplish. The next phase is the installation and exploitation. So we have also analytics that were built specific for this phase to identify potential installation of exploits, escalation of privilege. There are many attacks that would take place on this area in particular. And last but not least, the post-breach. At this point, it's really already late in the game if it's just now that you are responding, because at this point in time, the threat actor already compromised, moved laterally, probably already harvested some credentials, did some account enumeration, internal reconnaissance, and now is going to do is contact the command and control to potentially download more piece of malicious code and or extract information. Sometimes it's just a matter of extracting, dumping all that information to the command and control. So our analytics, regardless of the workload, we always think through this path, right? And ideally, for instance, responders, they will always focus on detecting right in the beginning of the cyber queue chain, ideally during the target attack phase. So that's Azure Defender, and that's Azure Security Center. I want to be very clear on that, because as community leaders that you all are, you have to have this very well established. Azure Defender is not an anti-malware, IIS anti-malware. Azure Defender is not a replacement for Microsoft Defender for endpoint. Azure Defender is a combination of capabilities available in Security Center that will give you threat detection. That's it. We don't need to overcomplicate this, right? It's pretty simple. What was the Azure Security Center standard is now called Azure Defender, right? So if you've been working with Security Center for a long time, don't overcomplicate because of the name. Very important, because I've seen a lot of questions. So with Azure Defender now, do I still need the anti-malware installed? Those are two different things, and I understand that the name may cause confusion, but I really want at least that this is very clear on this presentation. Container image scanning. This is our ACR solution. You enable that separately. There is a separate cost for that. It's part of the Azure Defender suite. It's called the Azure Defender for ACR. Okay. The idea of this capability is that we are going to leverage our built-in partnership with Qualys to do scanning on the container image. So when you enable this, we would do continuous scanning of the image that were pulled using Qualys engine, and we show the results in the dashboard. Okay, very important. We also have threat detection for AKS, which is something that it's also enabled separately, which we call the Azure Defender for AKS. Okay, so all the threat detections are now under the branding Azure Defender. So it's Azure Defender for SQL, Azure Defender for AKS, Azure Defender for ACR, right? So just put Azure Defender in the beginning, and just imagine that this whole thing is about threat detection. With AKS, we have a series of recommendations which are more towards the cloud security posture management space, and we have a series of threat detections that were built exclusively for this AKS scenario. The recommendations will show up into the recommendations dashboard, and the threat detections are going to show up in the security alerts dashboard. Like this, there is someone that needs to mute. Thank you. Then you will have also the Azure Defender for SQL. Again, same thing. Remember, in the past, it was the SQL ATP. Now it's Azure Defender for SQL. Again, we have threat detections available and vulnerability assessment as well. Okay. What we released new at Ignite was the Protect SQL Service Anywhere, powered by Azure Arc. So when you have Azure Arc now, you can onboard your SQL machines uh, in any place. If it is on-prem, if it is in GCP or AWS, you still take advantage of the threat detections that are available for SQL. So that's a good addition. Let me go through some demonstrations here around that. Again, I'm going to leave the questions to the end, but let's go to the Azure Defender dashboard here. So what we did on this dashboard, we moved everything that was considered cloud advanced capabilities, and we move it to this dashboard. So if you look at here, we have just-in-time VM access, right? We have just-in-time VM access, which before it was located on the Cloud Advanced. We have the adaptive application control, right? The network map. All those things were available before, but in a different location. So we move everything here for the advanced protection. And this is what you get when you upgrade to Azure Defender. Same capabilities that you have in the past, but now from this dashboard. So let's go for the first one, which is the secure alerts. So if I click on the secure alerts here, what I'm going to have is the same visualization that I had in the past regarding the alerts, okay? But we changed a little bit the experience when you open up the alert. So if you click on the alert itself, you see that we changed this experience, and whoever works with Azure Sentinel will notice that is more similar to Sentinel, and that was on purpose because we want to create more a seamless experience across those solutions. So now you have more details about the alert. You also have the MITRE framework phase. In this case, is the pre-attack phase. You have the description. And most importantly, you have something here that I think is really, really great, which is the take action. Why I say that this is really great? Because going back to the secure posture management lifecycle, you protect, you detect, and you respond. When you are on this dashboard right now, you are in between detection and response, right? You are doing investigation to detect something and then coming up with a plan, which probably you already have an automation. You can trigger a logic app from here to respond to that alert. But most importantly is how can I use the lessons learned from this incident to feed my protection and enhance my protection? This is exactly what we did with the prevent feature attacks. So if I look at here on this shows me that I have 3 open recommendations that if I had done my job of remediating those recommendations, probably I could have avoided these alerts to happen. So this is a great link in between the incident itself and how to take advantage of this from the learning perspective and improve my secure posture. Right. So this is a very important information that we added into the alert itself. The other thing that we added was the capability to suppress alerts. This is the feedback that we receive at least for the past 2 years. It took a long time, but it's finally here as well, which is the suppression. The idea of the suppression is that you can create rules, right? You can create suppression rules and say, look, every time that I receive a specific alert here, this alert, for example, that has this user account or this file, whatever. There are a bunch of entities that I can customize and say, this to me is a false positive, right? I want to dismiss this alert automatically because to me this is a false positive, okay? Right? Or I can just say other and say, well, I won't dismiss this because this is coming from my pen test team, pen test operation or whatever. So there are many scenarios in larger organizations that they have pen test teams coming and running pen tests against the resources that are in Azure. And Azure Security Center is monitoring, is going to trigger a bunch of alerts. and maybe you don't want to receive some of those alerts, right? You want to suppress, and you can also say the expiration time for that suppression rule. Okay, so that's also very important because ideally you don't want to be blind forever around those alerts. So it's always good to create an expiration date. The question that I usually receive is to where those alerts go. They just go to a black hole and we lose forever. And the answer is no. They are still going to be here, right? You just need to click on filter and select dismissed. So everything that is dismissed is because you could have a suppression rule. So when you suppress, what you are doing behind the scene is you're just changing the flag of that alert to say dismiss. I can still query this alert, those dismisses alerts here, right? So that's important. The other thing that's important to clarify regarding the alerts is that a lot of people think that every single alert that you see on this dashboard will be available on your log analytics workspace. And the answer is by default, that's not a true statement. By default, the only alerts that will be saved on your log analytics workspace, assuming that you are using Azure Defender, right, are VM-based alerts, for the VM-based threat detection. For example, if you enable SQL or storage threat detection, right, those alerts that are going to show up here on this dashboard will not be saved on your log analytics workspace by default. That's the reason why we launched this capability called continuous export some time ago. So there is this continuous export that allows you to select, right, the log analytics workspace that you want to export, continuously export those alerts. So this feature is the feature that you can use to export everything, all the alerts that are showing up on the dashboard and recommendations if you want, to your log analytics workspace. I've seen many scenarios where a customer says, well, I see this alert on the dashboard, but then I go to log analytics workspace, it's not there. And it's like, well, it's not supposed to be there because you didn't configure the continuous export. And the only ones that are there by default are VM-based alerts. And when I say VM-based alerts, let's be very clear also here. I'm talking about this. If I go to the price and settings and I select the subscription, I have a bunch of bundles, right? The idea of those bundles is you can be as granular as possible as far as threat detection. So this is the core Azure Defender for servers. You enable this, and there is the pricing for that. This is the Azure Defender for App Service. This is the Azure Defender for SQL Database. This is the Azure Defender for Storage. These are threat detections. If you don't have those workloads, you can just select off for what if you don't have and just leave VMs, for example. But if you have storage, then you can click on here, right? And at this point on, is going to be charged this amount for the storage accounts that you have, okay? For container registry, ACR, same thing. And that goes on and on. So at the end of the day, this is going to affect what? This is going to affect the threat detection for that workload. It's very important to emphasize that. If you want to have threat detection, and we have a very extensive documentation here, is a reference list of alerts that has all the analytics for all those alerts. So if I want, for example, to say, what do I gain if I enable threat detection, or also call Azure Defender for storage? What do I have? What do I gain with that? So you go here and you select the storage and you see the analytics. All these analytics will only be available if you have Azure Defender for storage, which is this option select as on. Okay, so there is a direct mapping between these options and the alerts that you see on this page. Okay, so just make sure that you fully understand this aspect of how it works. All right, so let's go back here. All right, so in summary, what we have is the free tier that takes care about the secure posture management and you have the Azure Defender upgrade that gives you not only the workload protection, but extensive capabilities. For example, if you need to manage multi-cloud environment, you need to upgrade to Defender, right? If you need to have vulnerability assessment powered by Qualys, you need to enable Azure Defender. If you need to have threat detection for VMs, you need to upgrade to Azure Defender. So when you're going through the life cycle again, you think about a roadmap to use the product, right? You go and you remediate every single recommendation and you achieve the dream 100% on your secure score. Now what? Oh, am I fully secure? Well, you are more secure than you were before, right? But how do you know if someone is actively trying to hack into your system if you don't have threat detection? Oh, now I need Azure Defender because I want to continuously monitoring my workloads to understand if there are active threat actors trying to hack into my workloads. So that's the mindset and how you evangelize customers to start with the free and then see the value with Azure Defender, which, by the way, you can enable as a trial for 30 days free. Okay, and just take advantage of the capabilities to do a POC and validate those scenarios. It's very important, the use of Arc, because Arc give a different dimension for those machines that are on-prem or in different cloud providers, because it appears in Azure as an Azure resource. So we are creating more threat detections and capabilities for those scenarios as well. As far as what you should do at this point, as I said, just a quick summary: enable Security Center, access your recommendations, make sure that you drive security score up, evangelize customers to utilize the security score as much as they can. Okay, we have a very important thing that I want to mention as well. In our tech community page, we have an article that explains how to use our Power BI dashboard. Okay, so this Power BI dashboard we built, the data science team in Israel built this Power BI dashboard that allows you to have a deeper visibility on your security score. In other words, if you see like this dip here, you will be able to click on this and see which recommendations and what happened to cause this drop on the security score. So make sure to utilize this. This is available in our GitHub repository. Okay, so you can basically download this from our GitHub and start utilizing. This is another very good place to go if you need to work on automations. We actually created an entire link here on Security Center dashboard just to go directly to the GitHub. So there are a lot of automations. There are a lot of workbooks available as well, simulations, and we encourage you, community leaders that are good on creating automations or workbooks. You have ideas. You have ideas of something cool that you did and you want to publish here. Do it. It's open to everyone to contribute. We review the pull request and we approve, and your name is going to be there, right? So if you have ideas of automations that you want to create or workbooks, scripts, Azure Arc queries, just share in there. Okay. Very important to mention that as well. And as far as resources, here are some important links, all the AKAs that we created to facilitate your work. So the docs files, the Azure Security Center in the Field, which is a bi-weekly show that I have where I interview engineers, developers from our research center in Israel that are working to improve Security Center. So there is one episode every other week. Next week, we're going to have a really cool episode with a security researcher from our Israeli team that discover some threat actors trying to break into the Kubernetes. So it's a pretty cool episode. Make sure to subscribe to the Microsoft Security channel. We also have the marketing sites for the Azure Defender and Azure Security Center. Okay, So with that, I think we have 5 minutes for Q&A.
Okay, Yuri, I catched 2 questions. What is the difference between Qualys in Azure Defender compared to Defender for Endpoint TVM?
Okay, that's a good question. So our solution, the Qualys integration, is targeted to servers, right? And it comes with the price that you pay for the Azure Defender, which is $15 per server per month. So you already have this as part of the solution. So our recommendation, our official recommendation is if you are using Security Center and if you are using servers to be monitored with Security Center, then you should be using our Qualys solution. The TVM as of now, from our perspective, is more for the endpoints that you have. So if you have endpoints, you should be using TVM solution to do the assessment of those endpoints.
Okay, and then what detection features are included on the free of cost ASC, sorry.
No, there is no threat detection on the free tier. So if you need threat detection, you need to upgrade to Azure Defender.
Okay, and do create dashboards and scripts. Is it custom query language that we need to master?
Yes, to create workbooks will be done using QKL, yes.
Okay.
And there's still another one, I think, but I think you already explained it in your session. What's the difference between Security Center and Defender?
Yeah, I hope it's clear by now.
Yeah, I hope so. It's clear. So that's why I said it. Yeah, it was one of the first questions I catched. So
yeah.
Oh, and
you explained it very well. So I think everyone now truly understands the difference, I think.
Yeah. Would you recommend using the playbook inside ASC or Sentinel? Because when you're using it in ASC would mean that you have them in 2 places, right?
So, yeah, great question. So this really depends on your organization infrastructure. And what I mean by that is if you have an organization that has a SOC team that is using Sentinel as the primary source of truth, in other words, they're doing investigations in Sentinel, then they should be doing playbooks in Sentinel because that's where they are going to do the investigation, right? But there are other organizations that they work in multi-tiers. I've seen some organizations that they have tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, right? Tier 3 is like the escalation team that uses Sentinel. But tier 1 is going to use Security Center for this initial triage and investigation. So they have playbooks there as well, okay? And if they need to escalate, they escalate to the tier 3 that also has playbooks for Sentinel. So it depends on how your organization is structured, how the teams are utilizing the platform. The rule of thumb is Sentinel is your investigation platform is because it is ingesting data from multiple data sources, right? So you want to run usually those playbooks in that location because you have multiple data sources to query.
All right.
So Tess, I think that covers your question. Yep.
All right.
Very clear.
Would you recommend to use DFE, so MDATP, for EDR on servers?
So that's another thing that we also have, right? So when you upgrade to Azure Defender, you get also as part of the license, you get the MDE for server, right? It used to be called MDATP, but it's now called Microsoft Defender for Endpoints on server. So you get this as part of the license. So Security Center will actually deploy the EDR to the servers as part of this upgrade to Azure Defender.
And do we have ready-made dashboards, which is must in next-gen SOC, like top 10, which each org must have, for example?
Not on our GitHub repository. I don't know if this is available on Sentinel repository. I will defer to Rod on his presentation to address that. If they have on the Sentinel side, we don't have this on the Security Center side.
All right.
So I think that were all the questions. Does somebody else still have a question for Yuri? You can still ask.
All right.
Yeah, I think we are on top of the hour. So thanks a lot, everyone, for joining, for the questions, and all the organizers to put this event together. Appreciate for the invitation, and good luck to the rest of the event.
Thank you for your time, and
Thank you
for your great session.
Thank you very much.
Yuri. Great session.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, so that being said, we are ready for the next session.